Hello and welcome. My name is Florencia Colella. I am a farm business educator with Michigan State University Extension. In this video, we will learn how to enter a few typical transactions in QuickBooks. This project is funded by the United States Department of Agriculture and the North Central Risk Management Education Center. Okay, so here is the QuickBooks desktop homepage. It's kind of like a mind map. For the purposes of this section, we are going to assume that your QuickBooks is already set up. If you need help setting up your QuickBooks, ask your local MSU Farm Business Management Extension educator for resources to do that, and consider joining the MSU Farm program that provides year-round support. So let's move on to sample entry number 1. Our first entry is a simple entry, writing a check to pay a bill from the local co-op store. This entry could be made using the check register. So if you click there, you'll see all your latest entries. The first column is the date, and here is everything for 2020. And now we are assuming we are in 2021, and this is going to be a 2021 entry. There is also the type of transaction, account, memo, and amount. Although we could use this screen, we're not going to because it's recommended that farmers print their checks using QuickBooks directly. So we are going to go back to the home screen and instead we will click on Write Check. We will enter the check number, date, amount, and select the bank account, vendor, and invoice number if we have one. Then we will enter the account or accounts at the bottom. For this particular check, our first line item is fertilizer, so we pick the fertilizer account and enter the amount, detail, and then we pick a class, which is QuickBooks' way of keeping track of enterprises. So the fertilizer is for the row crop enterprise. Same with the seed I purchased. And I will assign a gate that I bought to the livestock enterprise. Then we can print the check right here. And once we've done that, we'll click Save and New to enter our second check. This will be a payment for a piece of farm equipment. The procedure is exactly the same. Enter the check number, date, amount, select the bank account, vendor, invoice number if we have one, account, memo. The only difference is in the class. We don't normally use classes for balance sheet items like assets. We use the class method primarily for profit and loss items. So I'm going to skip that, and QuickBooks will prompt me to confirm I'm not using a class for this purchase. So I'll say yes to that and save and new. Now let's move on to our new example. Entering the purchase of a piece of farm equipment with a cash down payment, equipment trade-in, and financing the balance. As always, there is the option of the check register, but we will use the write check option for this example also. Let's focus on the bottom section. The total amount for the tractor is $35,500. And so that is the purchase of used New Holland T475 tractor assigned to the machinery and equipment account. And once again, I'm not using the class function for balance sheet items, so only profit and loss items for that. So I'm going to leave the class column blank. Then we're going to enter the loan from the ag lender, which is going to be assigned to a liability account, hence the negative sign. Note that the account that I assigned this to is a specific liability account for this loan that I had previously created. It is recommended that you don't have just one general account for all loans, but that you have one individual account for each specific loan. There's always time to lump them together at a later time, but at this stage, it's much better to be able to see each loan separately. So the dollar amount for the loan is $13,950. Note that I have put in the negative sign there. It doesn't do it automatically. Then I write the memo, 3-year note for New Holland T475 tractor, loan number 123. Since this is a liability account, not an income or expense account, I'll leave the class column blank. Okay, Next, we're going to take care of the trade-in of the old tractor. That's in the machinery and equipment account, and since I got rid of it, I put a negative sign on there. For the amount, this particular tractor had had an original purchase price of $26,000, and I took that information from my old records. Then I enter some notes, leave the class column blank because this is an asset, and we're ready to skip over to the next line. The next line is the accumulated depreciation. This is the depreciation taken on this tractor since I got it until the end of the previous year, in this case 2020, for a total of $22,300. Since depreciation is an expense, to remove this tractor's depreciation from my books, I have to reverse that. So I'm making this a positive number. This is called depreciation recapture. The last item we have to pick up on this is the gain on the old tractor sale. That goes to an asset account called machinery sales. In this particular example, the old tractor was taken in for an $18,000 value. Doing the original $26,000 negative value plus the $22,300 in depreciation recapture plus the $18,000 I got for the trade-in gives me a gain of $14,300. So we're going to enter that amount with a negative sign and note, and we're done. The amount you had to write a check for at the time of the transaction is $3,550. That's the down payment of 10% of the new tractor price, and it matches the balance of all of the numbers entered at the bottom. QuickBooks won't let you save unless this is all balanced. And that concludes this particular entry. Whew, this was a complicated one. Now let's move on to the next one. This one is much simpler. A farmer gets an operating loan from the bank and records the deposit. As usual, we could enter this into the check register, or we could use the record deposits feature. We're going to do it here in record deposits. So first, we're going to select the bank account the money flowed into, the date, and leave a brief memo. Then we're going to move on to the bottom section, and we're going to leave the first column blank because in the second column we'll use an account name that includes the name of the organization we're getting the loan from. So in this example, we had an operating loan from Ag Lender already set up. So I just picked that one on the second column. Remember that you should have an account name such that you can tell this loan apart from other loans. Then I entered a longer memo, 12-month operating loan for the 2021 crop year. Since this was an electronic funds transfer from the bank, I'll just write EFT in the fourth column. And lastly, the amount. Since this is a liability, we don't bother to put a class on it. Then save and close. Now let's just see how it looks on the check register. This is the cash register for the bank checking account. There's today's date, deposit, the account, the short memo, and the amount in the deposits column. So this is what it looks like if you're using the check register view to either make or view your entries. Any income that does not require inventory tracking, such as loans, crop insurance, patronage, dividends, or government payments, can be recorded using this method. Next, we will record a farm checking debit card transaction for Sunday lunch with the family. This is a family living expense. In this example, the farmer is using farm funds, which are business funds, to pay for a personal non-farm business expense. So we are going to use the Write a Check feature. And we're going to enter today's date, DEB for debit card transaction, the amount, the vendor name, or at least a description like local shop or local restaurant, the account, so family living, and a memo. Since this is a non-farm expense, we'll leave the class column empty and we'll save and close. Another option for entering this transaction would be to post a withdrawal from an equity or net worth account, like a draw. The next transaction we will look at is a purchase of farm supplies using a credit card. For this transaction, we will use the Enter Credit Card Charges screen on the QuickBooks homepage. So first, you need to make sure to have the right credit card account at the top, especially if you have more than one. Then enter the vendor name, date, reference number if you have one, amount, and memo. Then pick out an account, in this case livestock expenses, or you could use an account such as feed. And then pick out a class to the far right, in this case livestock, because this is cattle feed. Then save and close. Now, a note about credit card transactions. Instead of entering them yourself, you could have QuickBooks sync your transactions straight from the bank. You can also make rules to categorize them automatically. There's like an approval process where you check your transactions and make sure they are coming into your books the way you want them to. So that's nice, and it's a feature that Quicken offers also, and even Mint, which is the free alternative to Quicken. If you aren't sure you want to use QuickBooks yet, you could try that. Okay, next we will write a check to make a quarterly payment on the tractor loan that was discussed in an earlier entry. So we write a check. The payment amount to the local ag lender is $1,743.75. We will make sure our bank account at the top is the right one, and then we'll enter the name of the ag lender, check number, date, amount, memo, and then we'll pick a liability account and assign the principal amount to it. In this example, the principal amount is $1,575.33. The rest is interest. We know this because we are looking at the loan statement from the bank. Since this is a balance sheet item, we're not going to charge this to a particular class account, but we will for the interest portion. In this case, assigning it to the row crop class, as that's what we use the tractor for. We talked before about having a separate account for each individual loan, and you will notice here that we do not just have an individual account for the loan itself, but also for the interest portion. See how they both have the New Holland T475 name in them? The loan itself is a liability account, a balance sheet account, and the interest account is an expense account. So let's make a stop here and see what's the procedure for entering new accounts. The easiest way to add a new account is to go to the top of the options in the drop-down Accounts menu. It says Add New highlighted in green. Then it asks what type of account it is. In this case, let's suppose we're adding the interest account, so we will pick Expense and continue. And then we'll give it a name. In this case, a good name would be Interest New Holland T475 Loan. A nice thing we can do here is set up a general interest account and make all individual loan interest accounts sub-accounts of this broader one. You can also assign this new account a number to make your entries faster. So at the top right of this screen, in this case, for example, if the general interest account is 033 and this is the fifth loan I have, I can number this account 033-005. And then I'm ready to save and close. So now let's move on to the next entry, recording farm crop sales. This will be a two-step process used to record any sales where you would like to track quantities or keep an inventory. The first step is to create a sales receipt. And let's just walk through it very quickly. In this example, we're going to sell corn. So we'll pick corn from the item dropdown. Then we'll enter a description, quantity, class, row crop in this example, and the amount. The rate per bushel is automatically calculated by the software. We'll also make sure we have the date and buyer at the top. Then we save and close. Once you've done this, you'll notice that there's a little one on the Record Deposits icon. So we are going to click on this. And it will show the deposit we want to enter. We're just going to make sure our payment is selected and press OK. And it will take us to the deposit funds screen. So here we're going to make sure we have the right account and date at the top, enter a couple memos, both at the top and bottom, pick a class, row crop in this case, and save and close. Okay, now before we move on to our next transaction, let's see what to do if we didn't have the item in our list. When we go to create a sales receipt, it will give us the option to add a new item, highlighted in green at the top of the drop-down menu. Here, we're going to type in the name of the crop, a description, and very important, the account at the bottom right. Then click OK and you're done. So let's move on to sample entry number 9, transferring money from farm savings into farm checking. The farmer needs to add money to the farm operations checking account from their general farm savings account. This is a simple transfer, but it is important to account for it in order to have reconciled accounts with the bank statements at the end of the month. Since this is a very simple entry, we're going to use the check register this time. But we could use the write checks feature if we wanted. So we go to the check register option and we will be able to select which bank account we will be working with. So let's pick the checking account. And now at the top, we can see we're working on the checking account, and we have added at the bottom a deposit into the checking account from the savings account for an amount of $5,000. So it's a debit or a deposit into the checking account. Alternative, we could have gone into the savings account and recorded a credit or a reduction to that account. Either way, so we record it and we're done. In this video, we learned how to enter a few typical transactions in QuickBooks: paying a bill from the local co-op store, paying for a piece of equipment, paying for a piece of equipment with a loan, a down payment, and a trade-in, recording a loan coming in, recording family living expenses, recording farm purchases with farm credit cards, recording farm loan payments, recording crop sales, and moving money from savings into checking accounts.